Today we're going to talk about the Enlightenment, and we're going to do so by looking at a German philosopher, Immanuel Kant, writing in the second half of the 1700s, really when there was no Germany yet. I think that's important for everybody to remember, that German-speaking Europe is a whole bunch of principalities with some strong big states like Prussia, Austria, Bavaria, but there's no unified Germany yet. And Kant is writing this text, which we've assigned for the course, What is Enlightenment?, as his attempt to articulate why the progress in education, progress in knowledge, progress in thinking is not only good for individuals, but will have a salutary effect on society. Lots of the leaders of these societies were very worried about enlightenment because they thought as people became more educated, as people became more independent, they might actually not want to be subjects to kings anymore or subjects to aristocrats. And so Kant, on the one hand, is saying enlightenment is really important. It's something we need to accentuate, to emphasize, to energize. On the other hand, he wants to say, don't worry about it. If you're a member of the elite, you have nothing to fear from enlightenment, because enlightenment, in the end, can be a powerful ingredient in the increase of power for the whole state, for the whole society. So What is Enlightenment is, as I said, a small text of Kant's. It's even a work of journalism. Today we need to understand a little bit about the philosophical context that Kant operated in some ways the intellectual context of the 18th century to which he's responding. Maybe I should say a word about enlightenment from our perspective, or at least from, I should say, my perspective as your professor. There are lots of definitions of enlightenment. Here's one I think that you can find useful for the duration of this course and perhaps even beyond. And that is, enlightenment is the project to make the world more of a home for human beings. Enlightenment is a project to make the world more of a home for human beings through the use of reason. Through the use of reason. That's really important because making the world more of a home for us, that is, reducing its dangers, bringing out its potential through the use of reason, is going to demand science, it's going to demand education, and it's going to demand certain calls for freedom that will allow people to transform the world to make it more hospitable for human beings. The Enlightenment also, though, is a social movement. It is not just a bunch of big-shot philosophers talking about big ideas. It's a whole range of writers who take Voltaire's injunction to écraser l'infâme, which really means it means squash out infamy, but it means get rid of all the nonsense, get rid of all the baloney getting in the way of progress. And for many journalists, for many small-time intellectuals, we could call them, this just means showing that people who are really full of themselves, people who have power and prestige and a certain kind of snob appeal, that those people are just nonsense. And we have to get rid of them. We have to show that we can do better than that. So the Enlightenment, there's a philosophical side, and then there's this kind of journalistic, social movement side. Kant is responding to both of those things in this essay. What is enlightenment? Before we dig into the essay a little bit, I just want to say a little bit more about Kant's philosophical concerns and what drove those concerns. Kant described himself, and you'll see this on one of the slides we'll show you during the course of this video, as steering a middle course for philosophy. Steering a middle course for philosophy. What did that mean? It meant for Kant that he would defend reason, defend science, defend this new form of enlightenment, but also, he said, he would make room for faith, make room for belief. He wanted to have his cake and eat it too, if we can use that expression. History of philosophy, from Plato to Kant, is consumed with the problem of how do you connect the ideal and the real? For Plato, it was the ideal forms, the ideas, sometimes you call them, how are they related to the real? In Kant's time, that question took the form of a battle about skepticism. And I want to give you a little bit of background about that before we go more into Kant proper. In the modern period, the battle of skepticism can be framed beginning with Descartes. René Descartes who wrote famously in the Discourse on the Method a sentence that everybody who studied a little philosophy should remember, and that is, I think, therefore I am. This is Descartes. I think, therefore I am. What did he mean by that? He meant that he could doubt everything around him. He could doubt that this was really a bookcase. He could doubt that he was really in the room now, that I'm talking to you. These I could doubt because maybe I'm dreaming. But the one thing I cannot doubt, Descartes said, is that I am doubting. And doubting for Descartes is a form of thinking, so this becomes the bedrock for Descartes. I think, therefore I am. So for Descartes, you can keep skepticism at bay. Keep skepticism at bay by the certainty of your own subjective thinking existence, doubting existence. And on the basis of that clear certainty of one's own existence, you build up other clear and distinct ideas. These was what he called the kind of bedrock of thinking on which you can then build secure notions of science, of calculation, especially of mathematics, of optics, and you can keep skepticism at bay because you are building on something secure. Clear and distinct rational ideas that must be true because they are part of the apparatus of our thinking, the logic of our minds. So that's Descartes on one side. On the other side, you have Locke in the English Enlightenment, if I can use this shorthand. He didn't say, I feel, therefore I am, but he should have said that, I guess. In other words, Locke thought, we get knowledge not by closing our eyes and thinking really hard about what must be true. For Locke, we get our knowledge through experience. We want to know if this is real. We tap on it enough. Our hand starts hurting. Gosh, that's real. We get our knowledge by more and more sensation, by more and more experience, by more and more experiments. And so for Locke, the way you keep skepticism at bay is by piling up experience leading to knowledge. Now, David Hume came along in close to Kant's time and argued that, well, experience didn't really give you knowledge, it really just gave you habit. It just gave you customs that you got used to. So I get used to this being hard, and that's all it is. It's just a custom, it's just a habit. It's not something with a foundation. And that's a new kind of almost, we can call empiricist skepticism that really worried Kant. So when Kant was writing his major philosophical works, he was trying, he said, to steer a course between the rationalism of Descartes and the empiricism of Locke and Hume, to actually make a place for clear and distinct ideas that you understand by really thinking hard, and also experience that you get from being out in the world and registering these sensations.